And once again, welcome back. So starting in this video, we've got about 4 videos dealing with the TerrainGenerator. This is what's been titled kind of as TerrainGenerator Cleanup, and we're going to be kicking things off with a look at the TerrainGenerator's constructor.
Right. Well, the next 4 videos are all tied together. This is kind of probably the most complex part of what we're going to be doing in this series. So I wanted to break it up and deal with each method one at a time, which means through each one of these videos, until we get to the very last one, we're going to be breaking the terrain generator, so we won't be able to go back into Unity and build and test and make sure the changes that we've made are working until we get to the very end of these next videos.
Okay.
So let's start off with the TerrainGenerator constructor. Even before we get to that, though, is we've got these base map and detail maps here that we're saving. We're not keeping individual base maps and detail maps anymore, so we're going to kill these. This is going to cause all kinds of issues. I'm also going to delete their fields. Again, we're going to make all the code really mad. If we're to try to build at this point, we're going to get some errors. So let's go ahead and start fixing it, though. Now, we need to have a structure to hold the base map information and our noise map information. That structure we're going to hold is going to be a multi-dimension array. So we're going to make a private float, and this is going to be a 3-dimension array. So we're going to need 2 commas. We're going to call this map data. Now, the way I'm structuring this is the very first element of the array is going to be the layer of the map that we're working with, whether or not it's the base map itself, if it's the low frequency noise, the mid frequency noise, or the high frequency noise. So we're going to have 4 different elements in this, or 4 different values in the first element. The second and third elements of this array are going to hold the X and Z coordinates, or X and Y coordinates of our texture. We're actually going to be taking our image and copying it into this array. Now, you might be wondering why we're going to do that. I mean, why don't we just do what we've been doing and sample the location using getPixel and then just ask for the red, green, blue, or alpha channel? The problem is again, when we move into multi-threading, we lose the ability to call that API functionality called getPixel. If we were to call it from inside of a thread, our program's going to crash. We're going to get an error if we're lucky saying something broke, but it won't tell us where it happened. And you're going to end up having to put a lot of comments or debug logs uncommenting code until you can kind of isolate to where it is. So with a lot of trial and error, I figured this out. So this is why we're copying stuff inside of a multi-dimension array. So let's go ahead and start populating that. Before we can populate it, though, we have to initialize it. So we're going to do map data is going to equal a new float array. And I know for a fact that we have 4 channels of information we're going to hold: the base, low freq, mid freq, and high frequency noises. So we're going to hold 4 elements inside the first part. Now, the next part that we don't know yet is going to be our map width and map height. So we're going to go ahead and look that up. Actually, let's change our arguments. Instead of taking 2 in, we're only going to take in 1 texture 2D, and we'll just call this map. So down here, I can call map.width and map.height. and this will initialize our map data. Now, we need to iterate through all of our points for each one of our channels inside of our map data. But I want to be able to define which layer that we're picking in a way other than using the value 0, 1, 2, 3, something that's a little bit more user-friendly. So to do that, I want to create an enumeration to hold that information. So we're going to create a private enum, call it map layer. And inside of map layer, we're going to define our values. We'll call them base, low frequency noise, mid frequency noise, and high frequency noise. This will just make it easier when we're referencing it, so somebody looking at the code can see what kind of noise we were expecting to be sampling from instead of just saying 0, 1, 2, 3.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to need to use nested loops to iterate through all this. So we're going to start off looking at the x, make sure that our x is going to go from 0 to our map width. And our second for loop will look at the z, and this will be our map.height. And inside of here, we're going to assign our values to our map data. So this map data, so we need to figure out what layer we're going to look at first. So we're going to cast our map layer dot base to an integer, which is going to equate to 0 because our first value is always 0. If you wanted to ensure that it was 0, you could always assign it directly.
That would ensure? You're inferring that it might possibly be something else?
Well, no, it would only be something else if somebody did that.
I know. Just giving you a hard time, Lee.
Yes, I know you do that. Especially the later in the morning and the less I'm thinking.
But that also means it's the less that I'm thinking too. See? Listen to how I'm talking now.
Yeah, so we're going to do our sampling. So we're going to use getPixel here. Now, we can do it here because we're doing this at the constructor level. The constructor gets called from the main game loop, or the main Unity thread, more so speaking. So it's okay to call getPixel from inside the Unity thread, the main thread. That's fine. But you cannot call getPixel from any thread that you create, any worker threads. That will blow up Unity. It gets very mad. So we're going to sample based off our X and Z, and we're looking for our alpha channel in this case. So the nice thing is the next 3 lines of code are the same, with the exception of what we're sampling and where we're putting it. So we're going to sample our red channel, our green channel, our blue channel, and instead of base for red, we're going to put in our low frequency noise. Green will be our mid frequency noise, and blue will be our high frequency noise. So this will sample in one, or through this in one pass, all 4 of our possible maps. And before, if you remember back to the Photoshop video where I was explaining that if you wanted this in effect solo just the base layer, by putting black in the red, green, and blue, you're basically writing 0 to each one of these values. So when we get down into the equations and we're doing the samples, we're returning zeros out of these. And when we return 0, 0 times whatever is 0. So everything but our height map would come back 0 if you put black and red, green, and blue channels. So that's what I was trying to demonstrate with the Photoshop video. Now, this is actually all we need to do with the TerrainGenerator. But if you look, we still have a whole bunch of other stuff that we need to fix. And we're going to go one by one through each of the methods and fix their issues in their own videos.
Okay.
So the next video, when we come back, we're going to jump into the get smooth height and fix the problems that are in there.
Okay, cool. And with that, that's going to wrap this up. Thanks a lot.